When we're looking through blinkers, when we're fixated on what we perceive to be the provision for this tiny individual, we often feel that life needs to be planned and plotted for, which creates anxiety. Just a tiny little bit more vision gives us that opportunity to witness it a little better. That seeing that there's something else, and that something else is everything. It encapsulates everything. I am everything and I am nothing, both and all. And it's about a shift of outlook or a shift of perception that all of these seeming forms, all things, all happenings, all attributes, all forms are from this one source. It's our limitations of our language that form how we conceptualize everything. But our normal view, it's through the telescope. It's seeing one thing and seeing it up close. The telescope that we think is giving us knowledge, because it lets us investigate one tiny thing far away in detail. But the truth is so much more than that one tiny thing. It's so much more than that detail. It's all of it. It's everything. That's what the truth is. If God is everything and everything is God, not only are we the thing that holds our whole perception of reality, but we create it. And so if we lose the desire to limit and label and pigeonhole everything, then there's nothing but that. If you abandon the telescope, you can see everything. The more you realize that everything is God, there's nothing but God, the more you realize that there is no need to search. It's there if you care to look. If you care to see it and accept it, it'll teach you everything you could ever need to know. And you'll find how easy and plentiful and interesting your life becomes.
You're listening to the Nonduality podcast. This is Nic Higham from nisargayoga.com. In this episode, I'm joined by Dan Jackson. Ultimate reality is expressed through what is revealed, what is known, but in another way is concealed through that manifesting appearance, because no appearance can encapsulate the absolute. What seems to be duality, what seems to be diversity, is only that one. So it's not just one without a second, it's the one within the appearance of a second. It's this infinite ocean of reality within which there are these transient waves. The waves are not really waves, they're only ocean. The nature of the waves is only the nature of the entirety of the ocean. But that doesn't mean that we should bypass this experience of life as we know it, but to see it for what it is, see it in context, and to appreciate the essence. It's said in Advaita Vedanta that liberating knowledge, vidya, is the ability to distinguish between what is superimposed on self and its true nature, our true nature. Conversely, avidya is the persistent mistaking of appearance for reality, the source of ignorance. And this veil of ignorance covers the knowledge of the reality that we are. So once those appearances are seen for what they are, the manifesting creative power reveals reality. Each form is only that, and that includes this body-mind and this sense of self. This sense of self is an expression of that reality. I am not limited to that sense of self, not limited to this body-mind. I'm not limited in any way. And the only thing that seems to limit me or seems to conceal me, veil me, and put me in a state of ignorance is in believing that any one of my appearances, one of my manifestations, has the monopoly on reality or is split off from reality. So what's left in the recognition of truth is to celebrate, to explore potential, which turns out to be unlimited. So it's like this playground, or this kind of almost like science lab where you can experiment and just see what you can do with this potent outpouring, this radiating expression of self. Here's a quote by a student of Robert Adams, Andy Kinkart, and this is an extract from a letter sent to Robert Adams, which he read out in a meeting. The self is being continually revealed as absolutely inescapable. This entire world of appearance is nothing but an expression of the self. Bondage or liberation, suffering or bliss, there is no distinction in the light of truth. Whether the body-mind is identified or not, it is still consciousness and nothing else. Consciousness is all there is. The form that it takes on in this incredibly diverse world is irrelevant. Exactly what does realization mean when everything is already the self? The self realizes itself in all forms of existence.
Exactly. All the material things that we feel are so important and divert our attention away from whatever it is that we're searching for, away from knowledge or reality or God or whatever you want to call it. All of them are only that. And so if you see the limitation, if you see the veil, then it's there. Once you realize that there is no veil, you can refuse to play the game. Once there's no veil, it's like it's blindingly obvious that everything is that. And there's lessons in everything. You know, the world's there to teach us, like your analogy of the science lab. What's better than this body for keeping you entertained or interested? You know, this body-mind complex is what I mean when I say the body, this encapsulated thing that we take ourselves to be. Once you've recognized that you're not limited to this flesh sack, then it's nothing but a wonder. It's like that small step away from the blinkered, closed view of needing to be fixed or worked on, that little step away. And it's so interesting to see how life teaches us, to see how we deal with different situations and things that a few years ago could have caused so much thinking and worry and anxiety. You realize it's just another thing that's happening. Let's see what happens. And you have that little buzz of excitement about things rather than that heavy weight of fear, you know? In Ramana Maharshi's realization story, he says he feels this current. I often wonder if that current is like that buzz of excitement that every child feels, you know, about a new prospect. Especially as a small child, the new is exciting and wonderful. That's the key. Life is full of the new and the exciting and the wonderful. It's not there to get you, you know, it's not the adversary. It's not your enemy. It's your best friend.
Yeah, we are literally always learning about ourselves. And that could mean you are learning about yourself as a person, as a body mind, learning about your patterns, your idiosyncrasies, learning about your habits of thought, feeling, and action. Endlessly fascinating. Also, in a higher way, you're always learning about yourself as the one self, as reality. And this constant unfolding of experience is that very process of self-realization. We imagine these expressions, these appearances, are actually limited forms and not what I am. But none of those appearances define you. All of those appearances express you to some degree. And this is why it's better to say that you are no thing. It's not quite true that you're nothing, because there is this palpable aliveness of being, this fullness of expression, this potent buzz or throb of consciousness appearing as energy and then seemingly becoming solidified as distinct forms. And you can feel that. It's unavoidable. And you can see it, you can hear it, you can smell it and taste it. If you're sensitive and just take a moment to tune in, and then more and more you recognize that at all times, there is this divine, cosmic, energetic expression. That is the everythingness. Nisargadatta says, love says, I am everything. Wisdom says, I am nothing, no thing. So love is this illusion or collapse of separation, the falling away of this illusion of separateness, this veiling power of Maya. Of course you are me. Of course you are me. All is me, not me, the limited I, but me, the ultimate I. Of course. And that's love. There's no trying to love you. There's just, I can't help but love you, because there's only what we are and there is no we. This is just this ecstatic celebration of what we are, knowing ourselves in every possible way. And that's love. So you're always learning about yourself through that outpouring of everythingness. You seem to be forgetting yourself as well. I mean, it's also been said that Shakti is Maya. Really, it's the revelation of truth. It's the revealing of the ultimate. Because what is Maya but magic? The literal meaning of Maya is magic. It's this magic show. And you can't really be diverted away from truth, because all is truth. But no concept is true. There's no limitation. You are no thing becoming everything.
Yeah, like Nirguna Brahman, without any attribute, the ultimate truth, the no thing. That's the sun, and the rays of the sun are the attributes, you know, that explosion of seeming form, seeming variety, the truth of what they have exploded or expanded from is that. It's about a shift of outlook or a shift of perception, that all of these seeming forms, this saguna, is one thing. It comes from one place. All things, all happenings, all attributes, all forms are from this one source. If we lose the desire to limit and label and pigeonhole everything, then there's nothing but that. And yet, I am everything and I am nothing seem totally contradictory. In reality, the truth is both and all. It's our limitations of our language that form how we conceptualize everything. You were saying some people define the Shakti as Maya, and it reminded me of, like, you know, the Sankhya system, that sort of Raja Yoga or Hatha Yoga, and also that the Bhagavad Gita is pretty much based on the idea of Purusha, which is the ultimate reality, and Prakriti, which is nature, the best definition of it. But the truth is both, is all. You know, Prakriti, just like you were saying about Shakti, it's the creative energy of the Purusha, of the oneness, of the beingness. Without that spark and that safety and that purity and that abundance, you couldn't have the panoply, the vast diversity that there is to experience. But again, it's our perception of our body, our ego, not being part of it. We look out of the window at nature and we forget that we're nature too.
Yeah, there's nothing but the all, even while the defining mind operates. There is still all. No concept, no characterization, no qualification, no definition can taint, can tarnish the all. It seems like a paradox. How can there be the diversity of expression and non-dual reality? Surely it has to be one or the other. How do I get to that non-dual state? How do I get there? We ask that as an individual, as part of this world of duality. I'm an individual set apart, lacking, insubstantial, desiring, fearing. How do I get to this pure state? How do I get there? What do I need to do? What practice? What do I need to remove from my experience in order to see this, to recognize this? And coming from that position, that's all you experience, because you are supposing, you're believing that this isn't it, that this isn't the all already. It's both the yin yang and the encompassing circle that embraces the yin yang segments. That circle is the infinite context of self. The self starts to interact with itself through those dualizing segments, and then at some point realizes, I am the holding capacity for duality. I am the awareness that not only embraces diversity, but creates it, manifests it. So nothing needs to change. I can continue to manifest this because there's only me knowing myself through multiplicity. That process is inexplicable, and yet you're playing with definition. You're playing with definition always. You are the purity of self. You are this nirguna Brahman, motionless. And then in movement, you are saguna, with attributes. And yet those attributes don't really do anything, don't really describe you. But then you express yourself as the rajasic movement, restlessness, seeking, gravitating towards fulfillment, trying to remember who you are in infinite ways. And also the tamasic state of inertia and dullness and stuckness, feeling lost. And then maybe at some point, this sattvic clarity shines through, reveals home. You see tamas and rajas for what they are. As Nisargadatta says, it is in the nature of sattva to reconcile and neutralize tamas and rajas and rebuild the personality in accordance with the true nature of self. Sattva is the faithful servant of the self, ever attentive and obedient. And then he also says, when I identify myself with the gunas, I am their slave. When I stand apart, I am their master.
Nisargadatta's real first name was Maruti, which is a name for Hanuman. Hanuman has been part of my life ever since I was tiny. One of the books I learnt to read with was a book about Hanuman stealing the sun when Hanuman was a baby monkey.
Wow.
At the end of the Ramayana, Rama asks him, what have you learnt? What is the truth? And he said, when I identify with this body, I'm your slave or your servant. We would now translate it as, when I relate to my mind, then I know that I'm a part of you. But when I connect to Brahman or to the self, then I know that you and I are one. When we're looking through blinkers, when we're fixated on what we perceive to be the provision for this tiny individual, then we often feel that life needs to be planned and plotted for, which creates anxiety. with just a tiny little bit more vision. That gives us that opportunity to witness it a little better. But most people aren't even interested in this. The very fact that you're here and talking to me, the very fact that people are listening to us, you and I talk now, that's the grace of the Guru. That's God's grace. Even within all the uncertainty, that's seeing that there's something else, and that something else is everything. It encapsulates everything. Once that idea or that new concept, that new outlook or perception is planted, it'll grow.
Yeah, so the word outlook in the earlier sense means a place from which an observer looks out or watches anything. As an individual, you are looking out, always looking out. And even when you look within, you feel like you are a point of focus, a point of awareness. It's a very narrow, incredibly narrow view, a blinkered view, as you said. But there is this possibility of a new outlook. Your outlook grows, it expands, it seems to expand. So you're no longer this kind of little awareness or a personal awareness, you are awareness itself. You actually view the viewpoint, don't you? It's how is that possible? And this is why self-inquiry leads to not an answer, not a conclusion, but the dissolution of a need for one, a need to find a final self, a final outlook, a final viewer, a final witness. You never find a final witness because you are the ultimate witness and you are indefinable and unfindable in objective experience. Even the most neutral of definitions, self-concepts, will ultimately lead to suffering. Where there's suffering, there's limitation, there's a false viewpoint, and the fact that it causes suffering, there's wisdom in that. Like in a way, like it should cause suffering, because that suffering is saying, no, you're more than this. You're more than this. You're limiting yourself.
All the talking of outlooks and viewpoints, it made me think of like let's say an area of beauty, and you get those viewpoints that has a telescope, and that's how our view is, right? Our normal view, it's through the telescope. It's seeing one thing and seeing it up close. The telescope that we think is giving us knowledge, you know, because it lets us investigate one tiny thing far away in detail. But the truth is so much more than that one tiny thing. It's so much more than that detail. It's all of it. It's everything. It's us seeing it. It's the person standing behind us waiting to look through the telescope. It's the 20p, I'm sure it's £1 now, that you have to put in the telescope. You know, it's all of it.
Yeah.
That's what the view is. That's what the truth is. Like, if God is everything and everything is God, not only are we the thing that holds our whole perception of reality, but we create it. Yet, if everything's God, why do we feel the need to change anything? Why do we feel the need to perfect what is inherently perfect? Who are we fighting against? It's only ever ourselves. This quote comes from Shivananda Saraswati. It was when, I'm sure the man's name was Dr. Thompson, and he was an American, I think, but definitely a Western psychologist who was visiting India, doing that typical thing that people were doing in the 50s and 60s of traveling around to see all the different saints. And he was posing actually the question that Swami Vivekananda posed to his guru Ramakrishna, which was, have you seen God? And Shivananda answered, I see God everywhere, in the trees and in the birds, in the river, in the animals and plants, in every person I meet. I even see him in front of me now, sir. There is nothing but God. The more you realize that like everything is God, there's nothing but God, the more you realise that there is no need to search. It's there if you care to look. If you care to see it and accept it, it'll teach you everything you could ever need to know. Just as I said to somebody the other day, just take your handle off the tiller, freewheel for a while, and you'll find how easy and plentiful and interesting your life becomes. It's the very need or perceived need, desire to steer that gets you off the path.
And when the need to steer relaxes, then the path is in all places at all times. And then you don't simply become a seer. You know yourself as the very seeing. You don't see yourself as having awareness, but you are awareness. And when you experience something, you are the very experiencing of that thing, and therefore you are that thing. There's only the seeing, there's only the awareness, there's only the experiencing appearing as all of this, and you are that. Wei Wu Wei says, the center of infinity is in all places, and I am the center of all infinity. That I am is the catalyst for experience, for knowing yourself. I am ... I am this, I am that. Oh, I'm no longer that, and now this. Oh, but what if I'm this? Oh, I'd like to be this. Oh, I'm going to strive to be I am this. And that I am is consciousness. It can hold any concept, it can hold any qualification. I mean, it has no problem with anything attached to it. It's like, bring it on, I'm here. I can hold it all. But then along the way, we focus on the qualification, and that becomes our outlook, that becomes our identity, and we lose sight of the fundamental I am, the center of all infinity. It becomes a point when it becomes defined. The center is infinity, and it seems to shrink and become the individual, but it never really does. That is only an experience arising in and from that infinite self. And here's Nisargadatta. I find that somehow, by shifting the focus of attention, I become the very thing I look at and experience the kind of consciousness it has. I become the inner witness of the thing. I call this capacity of entering other focal points of consciousness love. You may give it any name you like, since at any point of time and space, I can be both the subject and the object of experience. I express it by saying that I am both and neither and both and beyond both. And here's a quote by Yoneshwar. Strive to experience the sense of unity with all things. Feel yourself in the universe and the universe in you. I am telling you again and again, there is no greater experience than perfect oneness.